and you get a kind of insight into that world. And most people, to be honest, most people are pretty nice or professional enough to appear nice.
Right.
Occasionally,
Were
you
there
would have
any real
Westlife
arseholes? Were there any real
or
arseholes?
Westlife, but
Westlife.
not just as people in show business. I would genuinely say I think they're the worst human beings I've ever met.
Welcome. We are Neil,
Luke.
And Dave.
340-somethings, reminiscing on the runners and riders of 90s guitar music.
We look at the bands who soundtracked our youth on both sides of the pond and interview some of our heroes from the bands that defined a generation.
You'll hear about the good, the bad, and the ugly of 90s guitar music.
This podcast is Stupid and Contagious. Right, episode 61 of the Stupid and Contagious podcast. How many more episodes are we doing? A couple more?
39.
Yeah. And then we'll test to see where we are. If we haven't got 1 million followers by then, that's it. See you later.
Neil wanted it to double every week, didn't he? Imagine if it had.
Yeah.
Now we'd have
ridiculous.
Like trillions
We'd have about
on trillions of
the whole world would be listening. That was my plan.
More than that.
Yeah.
Idiot.
We're getting there anyway. It's,
Got enough.
Yeah, it's good. We're going to be speaking to Douglas from BMX Bandits later. It's a really good one. I say that every time, but I really did enjoy this chat.
It was one of my favourites to do, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Really engaging, interesting guy.
No, but why was it one of his favourites to do?
I don't know. It just felt really warm and open, the whole conversation. I'm glad it was a one-on-one rather than a two-on-one.
All right. So you're saying that if I'd have been there, it would have been shit?
You would have ruined the whole thing, man. Yeah.
You're probably right, to be fair.
Chirping in with your nonsense. No, I think it worked. He was kind of he was so open and willing to talk about stuff, and I think it worked better in a one-to-one format.
Yeah, it's good.
I really enjoyed it. Really.
So yeah, that's coming up. What have you been up to, Luke, this week?
Not a lot, basically. Just the usual, the 3 R's: reading, writing, records.
Did you get that link I sent you today?
Yeah, enjoyed it.
What do you think?
Not bad. It's not bad. I don't know if there's too many of those bands now, though, right? It's becoming a bit of a parody of itself, that kind of geezer style,
the Cockney sort of talking music.
Yeah, so Neil sent me a link to a band called, what are they called, Neil?
I can't remember what they're called now.
Good Health, Good Wealth. And they're kind of
That's
drum machine, and then a guy kind of speaks singing about, everyday geezer stuff. So a bit like Sleaford Mods kind of style. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
I know what you're saying, though. Yeah, maybe that is sort of, it's getting a bit saturated in that sense. A lot of bands doing a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, enjoyed it though. Although I was listening to a load of old records at a weekend. I listened to, a band Sweep the Leg Johnny, and I was really upset to find the singer died at the end of last year. Hey.
Oh no, I remember you talking about them actually a while back. Sweep the Leg Johnny.
Yeah,
I went to see. It's a great name for a band.
It is a good name, isn't it? Sweep the Leg Johnny. I went to see them in Brighton in 1999. And I think it was the most drunk I've ever been in my entire life.
Blottoed.
Yeah, absolutely blottoed. I went like after work. You remember my mate Chris Walnut? I went with him after work.
Yeah, I think so.
And for some reason, we invited these two women from the office to come with us. They were like, no, it wasn't like that at all. Not in any way. And they were like the most like towny kind of stereotypical, Sharon and Tracy types you could imagine. Yeah. And we invited them to this gig to see an experimental rock band where the singer was also a saxophonist.
They would have been more at home at the event too, sort of thing.
Exactly. And I don't know why I just got really, really drunk, and Walnut had to carry me home.
Trying to impress them.
And I certainly wasn't. I think I might have insulted them, actually. I can't remember. Walnut intimated that I'd said some terrible things, but I have no memory.
You're quite an obnoxious drunk, aren't you?
Well, I don't drink I don't get that drunk these days, so I don't know. I probably was, yeah. And I had a job interview the next day. And
Oh,
it was
shit.
just,
Did you get it?
And I did. It was that job in the call center that I worked for many
Oh.
years after that. Yeah.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
it gave you a bit of, maybe you're still half drunk and you had that sort of, probably quite
Don't give a
chatty.
fuck attitude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't
You're
nervous
like
like I normally would be.
Probably
Spud's
good for
interview
interviews.
on Train
Yeah.
Spot.
Yeah. I felt
Yeah,
so
yeah.
rough. I felt so rough. Yeah. Anyway, that's a bit of that. Yeah. Bit of a sad news that he passed away. So that's what I've been up to. Oh, and Sweep the Leg Johnny, I've got one of the best song titles ever as well.
Go on.
They got a track called "Sometimes My Balls Feel Like Tits." Makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Fucking hell, that is good.
Going on the playlist.
On that note, Dave, what have you been up to?
Yeah, not a lot. I did listen to a Trump interview on the Lex Friedman podcast the other day.
Oh, I bet that was good.
To it? Yeah, have you listened to Lex Friedman?
No,
Never
not
heard of
really.
him.
No.
He's like a. He's like a.
I don't listen to podcasts. I fucking hate podcasts.
Only losers listen to podcasts.
Well, we don't want people to listen to it because it's really long and good.
Right.
Okay, yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
He's like a computer programmer, but he's turned into this podcast who
no way.
interviews
Oh
You
God.
fucking
got the most
don't you?
famous people in the world.
And he got Trump on. That's quite a scoop.
Yeah, but man, Trump, he's just so.
Yeah.
He's
a
almost
child.
not a human. He's not a person. He's
That's
so
weird. He is
ridiculous.
Give us an example.
There was one story he's telling about how great he was for spending a whole day with some veterans and how, Joe Biden would never do such a thing. He'd never do something like that without looking at his watch all the time. But Donald Trump, no, I wasn't looking at my watch. I was spending the whole day with them. Yeah, it's just he's such an idiot.
Do you think the rumours that he smells of rotten meat are true?
Yeah, it looks like he does.
Probably. I haven't heard those rumours, but
apparently true. Yeah, apparently so.
Well, if anyone's listening and or watching and can confirm or deny if they've met Trump and he smells of rotten meat,
let us know in the
comments. Put it in the comments.
Yeah,
Dave, what else you been up to?
Oh,
I went round there last night.
Yeah, I thought you were asking it as if there's something I should.
Well, yeah,
know.
I thought that'd be one of the highlights of your week, but obviously,
yeah, we had a bit of a fire, didn't we, outside?
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, it's not much to talk about. Actually, we had a little fire, had a cup of coffee in the garden, and listened to a mad horse out the back. That's
What's wrong with a horse?
Don't know.
I had a cough, I think.
Maybe he was feeling a little hoarse.
Oh, that's a good one. But yeah, nothing going on in the bed. Oh no, there is something going on in Berwick. You told me about it yesterday about the competition's back.
I'll save that for when it actually happens.
All right. Okay.
Oh no, let's get people anticipated, ready for it. What's the competition?
It's back.
Let's get the build up going.
The lip sync showdown, the Berwick lip sync showdown.
What is that? What's the Berwick lip sync?
Have you not seen it?
I can't even say it. Lip sync showdown. Oh, go on. Tell the listeners. Tell the listeners.
Yeah.
Well, when some of the families in the village, when our kids were younger, we were doing these lip sync videos each year and have a party, and then we'd show them to each other. So you download a song and then you record the family doing the song. But for quite many years, we didn't really get it that it was lip sync. We just thought you're meant to make a video, a pop video.
Right.
It was only in the later years we actually started lip syncing to the song.
Mm.
But now it's back for one last year only.
So winner takes all. Winner takes all.
Winner takes all. The
trophies
will stay where they are from that.
Oh, mate.
So it's the big one.
Yeah. Have you decided what song you're going to do?
Yeah, but I can't reveal it.
In case the competition gets wind. Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, no, don't give away any.
You can't afford to slip up now. No, not at all. No,
We're rooting
at this stage.
We're rooting for you, man.
Oh well, I think all our listeners will be too. Can they vote?
You've got
Is it a public vote?
More support than anyone else.
No. Okay.
Should make it one, and then you'll win hands down.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah, or not. When's the big day?
2 weeks.
Oh, it's quite soon.
Have you
Right.
recorded the video yet?
We've done anything yet.
Okay.
So we're just
Okay.
starting to panic.
No.
Better get that done.
Yeah.
No,
Just
mate.
be
All right.
authentic. Just be yourselves. and
Exactly.
Be fine.
Exactly. Keep us updated, man. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, that was my week basically. I went to
Going
Dave's
to
last
Dave's.
night.
That's his highlight, and it didn't
That's
even
it.
get a mention from me.
Just put the floor down in the van. It's got a floor now. That's quite exciting.
What's it made of?
Ply.
How did you attach it
from
to the van?
Really strong glue with battens. So you put battens down and insulate in between the battens, and then you put the ply wood on top and screw it in.
What do you mean by battens?
It's like bits of wood. So
I know. I've put a few floors down in my time. Never in a van, though.
First one I've done. So yeah, that was really exciting. That's the sort of thing that people like to listen to, isn't it?
I think people are keeping up to date with your van progress, actually. Yeah.
Oh, I wish you'd hurry up. It's taking months.
Yeah. I know.
It takes a long time. God, I'm doing other stuff as well, aren't I? Just can't remember any of it for this podcast. I've been listening to a lot of The Cure since last week's sort of conversation.
All right. What's the one album I should listen to?
Well, we spoke about already, Disintegration.
It's Disintegration.
You said you didn't like it.
I didn't say I didn't like it at all. I said I directly said I liked it, but
Listen to songs like Fascination Street, Disintegration, the title track. That's a great song. There's loads on there. Plain Song. That's a beautiful song. Yeah. So that's that. So should we get into the subject of this week's podcast? BMX Bandits.
Yes.
Douglas, let's do it. If you are watching this, then please do give it a thumbs up. Get involved in the comments and subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening, then please do rate, review, and share this with your friends. Thanks. Luke, do you want to introduce BMX Bandits? Is it the BMX Bandits or just BMX Bandits?
Just BMX Bandits.
That's what I thought.
All right. So BMX Bandits. It's basically just Duglas T Stewart. Is the core of the band. As he mentioned, he calls it an extended musical family rather than a fixed band. And
I like that.
Yeah, well, look, according to the list on Wikipedia, they have 24 past members and 5 current members listed on the Wikipedia page.
Right.
So, yeah, people have come and gone over the years. Yeah.
Is he the only one that's been there the whole time?
He's the only constant,
Douglas.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess indie pop, right?
Ask me the Wikipedia definition.
What's the Wikipedia definition?
Scottish guitar pop.
I like that. It is Scottish guitar pop. They're sometimes also called part of the Anorak movement,
right?
Of the mid-80s as well, which is kind of another name for like what was going on with C86 stuff.
What is C86?
Do I need to explain that?
I just kept thinking of Commodore 64.
But basically, C86 was an album that was released by the NME in 1986, and it featured like 20 odd kind of guitar pop bands at the time, and they pretty much defined indie music. Right. It was pretty much defined from that moment on, and it was kind of those kind of jangly, kind of twee fey guitar indie boys, basically. And and that's what it stems from, and that was the name of the album, and then it became a bit of a movement and a way to describe that kind of whole era. Let's see. But they sometimes called the Anorak movement because it's like, boys in train spotted anoraks being sensitive and that kind of stuff.
You'd have loved it, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't have minded. Yeah. So BMX Bandits.
Do you still use a satchel?
Don't use a satchel. I don't use a satchel because when I bought my new bike, last year, this year, and you need a rucksack to ride that because it's
dangerous with a satchel.
I forgot you used to have a fucking satchel.
All indie boys had satchels, no?
I know. Yeah. Well, yeah.
They formed in 1986 in a place called Bells Hill in Scotland, not too far outside Glasgow. But before that, as he talks about in the interview, they were a band called the Pretty Flowers from around 82, 83
That
time.
was interesting.
Yeah, so featuring people that went on to be more famous than the BMX Bandits, pretty much. So Francis McKee from the Vaselines was in it, who, incidentally, Francis Bean Cobain was named after.
Is that right?
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
know that. That's a good fact.
Apparently so. Everyone thinks it's Francis Farmer because of the song Francis Farmer Will Have a Revenge on Seattle. Apparently it's Francis McKee from the Vaselines.
Yeah. Covered already.
Sean Dixon from the Soup Dragons and Norman Blake from Teenage Fan Club.
Just going back to that quickly. He's a granddad now, isn't he, Kurt Cobain? Her and the Hawk had a baby.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. Congratulations,
Hawk
Kurt.
from
Grandpa
Cobra Kai.
Kurt. Eh?
Who's
No,
the
not
Hawk?
that one.
Oh.
Hawkster. Tony Hawk's son. Don't know what his name is.
Oh, yeah.
Did you watch the latest episodes of Cobra Kai?
I haven't
They
seen
did
it
like
yet.
half the season. They've released like half the season.
Is it
I'm
good?
still
Worth watching?
midway through it.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, no, Grandpa Kurt, isn't it? Post hummus post
Hummus.
Hummus.
Post hummus Grandpa.
Sure you can.
Can't you?
No, you can't.
Yeah,
No, you can't. No, you can't.
Well, you can on this podcast.
Emily's going to be a granddad as well, right? Haley is
Yeah.
so can have a baby.
It just shows how old we are that everyone's becoming granddads.
Yeah, it's insane, right? But that's pretty amazing, right? All of those bands coming out of that. Four pretty well-known bands coming out of that. One small town in Scotland. And also like Eugene Kelly from Eugenius was or Captain America, as they were, was also in a very early version of BMX Bandits. And Ian McCulloch from the Soup Dragons. Basically, lots of people. And they turned into BMX Bandits around 85, 86. Oh, by the way, I watched the film BMX Bandits yesterday because I was thinking about this. Yeah,
it's good.
It's good.
Well,
it's good. I remembered. I remembered so much of it. I remembered like exact jokes and stuff, and they were pretty much verbatim how I remembered it. It was great.
I think we've still watched it a few times around yours back in the 90s.
Maybe,
It was a family favourite, I think, of yours.
It was. Yeah. It's great.
Did it precede the band? Predate the band?
It's got Nicole Kidman in it when she was about 12.
No, she's older than that. She's like 16, 17. But
I don't know, is she? I don't know.
Yeah. She's BMX Bandit.
That was a big thing in the 90s, wasn't it? That film, Dead Calm.
Yeah, it was.
Good.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that.
It's a thriller, right? On a boat.
Yeah. With Billy Zane.
How was it?
Yeah,
she's great. Right, turned into BMX Bandits around 85, 86. Signed to the now iconic indie label 53rd and Third, which was it was a label of Stephen Pastel from the Pastels, another favourite of Kurt Cobain. And they released their first few singles on them. Started getting a bit of fame in Scotland. There's a great video on YouTube of them on some Scottish TV show doing a cover of Fight for Your Right to Party by the Beastie Boys. Nice. Which must have been just after that came out, though, right? Because it must have been about the same time. Yeah, which is cool.
It was like late 80s, wasn't it?
86,
mid to late 80s.
87, late 86, 87. And he changes the lyrics. Instead of the Beastie Boys, he says BMX Boys. Released their first album in 1989 called C86, and he talks about it in interviews, so maybe we can talk about that after. But it's kind of a sarcastically titled C86. Then they signed to Creation in the early 90s. And again, I ask about it in the interview, so we can talk about that after, maybe.
Yeah, we'll have a chat about that for sure.
Yeah. Second album, Star Wars, came out in 91. Third album, Life Goes On, is kind of when they start to get a bit more attention in 93. Had their biggest hit on it, Serious Drugs. It's a great song.
I went back and re-listened to that for this interview. You know, when you think, do I know that song or not? And then I put it on and instantly, I used to listen to it all the time, but I've completely forgotten. all about.
Well,
It's a
maybe you
great
heard
song.
the cover. So Gigolo Aunts did a cover of it. Maybe it was that you heard.
Maybe. I don't know, but either way, I used to listen to that song a lot back in the day. It's a great song.
It
do
really
enjoy
is.
it.
Around this time, they were supported by Oasis, and again, we'll talk about it in
That's
the
good.
interview,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we'll save that for after.
Again, another good story. Yeah.
But basically, they did it as a favour to Alan McGee to agree to let Oasis support them. Yeah, them and 18 Wheeler. So it sounds like a good lineup. Of course, around this time, but Kurt wore a BMX Bandits t-shirt in some kind of TV thing, and he said that if he could be in any other band, it would be BMX Bandits. He said that in an interview.
Pretty good, isn't it?
yeah.
You can't get much better than that.
It also means we don't need to interview Kurt because we know his answer.
That's right. Yeah, he's done us a
no
favour
point
there, hasn't he? Filled it in.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it was just all leading up to that, basically, to interview Kurt or his soul. We don't need to anymore.
Listen to the interview. Maybe he wouldn't say that.
What do you mean?
He might not say it now.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago. Yeah.
Right.
So are you saying we should get the Ouija board back out?
Yeah.
That'd be the 100th episode. We'll do a Ouija.
Yeah.
Remember that was a thing back in the day, wasn't it? People used to
Ouija boards,
in
the 90s. Yeah.
It was a really rebellious thing to do.
Were you actually scared of them?
Yeah, I never chanced it. I don't think I ever did one. I'm not sure if I did or didn't participate. But
I did, definitely. I did, but I totally believed it.
Did it move?
Yeah.
Do you know where the word Ouija comes from?
Tell us, Dave.
No.
Do you not know? It's just yes, it's yes, isn't it?
Oh,
French and German.
But why would it be called that?
Because you ask it yes or no, don't you?
But then it would be called
it should be a we know board.
We know.
I think someone might have done one in on toilets at Seaford Head and the glass smashed everywhere or something. I don't know.
It didn't.
Something went on.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100th episode. We'll do that.
100th episode. Okay, we're going to connect with the spirit of Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
What if he doesn't answer?
And we'd be a pretty short episode. Yes.
He might have moved on.
We might get the devil though.
That realm.
We might get the devil
It's
instead.
true.
That'd be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Can talk to him about music.
Well, devil has all the best tunes, as they say.
See what he listens to.
Yeah. Or
That'd be quite a good one.
Yeah.
Tune in episode 100. We contact the devil.
For a date with the devil.
Carry on. I think we've drifted off a bit.
All right. Fourth album came out in 95, Getting Dirty. Got it behind me there. Again, they're still kind of doing pretty well at this point. Pretty famous. Fifth album.
What are we going to do if we get banned on that you haven't got any of their records?
It happens quite a lot.
It's impossible.
It happens a lot.
Does it?
Yeah.
It hasn't yet.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah,
There's been plenty where I haven't got any of the records. There's been plenty. I've had that one for ages. For fifth album, Theme Park came out in 96. That's kind of the last album of the kind of that kind of era, basically. And then they left Creation Records. They had a kind of a break of 5 or 6 years, not releasing anything. And well, I mean, like he talks about it in the interview. You know, he was working at a TV company and everything. So I guess he was doing other things. But yeah, he started releasing records again, basically at the start of the new millennium, and he's been releasing records every few years basically since then. And he's now on this 12th studio album, Dreamers on the Run, came out this year, 2024, and I think it's really good. Did you listen to it?
I had a quick listen.
Yeah,
I haven't given it.
I liked it.
Yeah, I think it's really good. He described it as their most ambitious kind of album to date, and it does have a bit of a fuller sound going on, and really good songwriting. That's about it. There's been a couple of documentaries which I couldn't find. There's got a documentary called Serious Drugs, Douglas and the Music of BMX Bandits, which came out in 2011. We talk about it in the interview, but I couldn't find anywhere to watch it online, so I couldn't see it. And there's another documentary called Teenage Superstars about the whole scene. I think interviewing Norman Blake and Francis and stuff from the Vaseline. So
good.
again, I couldn't find a copy of it online, but there's a couple of documentaries out about him. And he's basically an underground indie icon.
Yeah, that's a good description. There's it's quite a long one, so let's have a listen to the interview, and then we'll come back and have a chat afterwards. Here's Douglas from BMX Bandits. Enjoy.
All right. Thanks for coming on. How are things in general?
Yeah, things are really, really good in both my everyday life and my rock and roll life. Things are generally pretty good. Yeah, BMX Bandits have been going 39 years, and
39. Fuck.
Yeah, I think we've probably made an album that's been our best or our most well received album so far, which is it feels extraordinary that many years in. That's the case, but definitely feels like that's the case, So that's interesting.
I've been listening to it quite a bit. It's great. Can you tell us about it? Tell the listeners about the new album.
Yeah, the new album is called Dreamers on the Run, and it's an album that I sort of started working on in my head about 10 years ago, and I knew it was going to be quite a musically ambitious record. That's what I sort of had as a notion in my head, and I started writing songs for it. And then I sort of got a little bit kind of ill in mind and body, and I decided I don't really think I've got the kind of energy for making this record just now. I'll put those songs aside. Maybe I'll get back to them someday. Maybe I'll get back to the idea of the album. In the meantime, I made another record, which was mainly made with my friend Stuart Kidd, just in a cupboard in his house. And it's a record I'm really proud of, BMX Bandits Forever, but it was more, I guess, lo-fi than the current album. And then I was working with a guy called Andrew Patty, who played guitar with BMX Bandits quite a lot over the last 10 years or so. We were working on a soundtrack together. And Andrew, like a lot of BMX Bandits, is a real multi-instrumentalist talent, and he's good at doing things like writing the dots for scoring instruments and stuff like that. And we enjoyed working on the soundtrack so much, I think I found the person who can make this Dreamers on the Run idea I had all those years ago a reality. Yeah, and that's what happened. We wrote some new material together. We worked on the material I already had, and Andrew brought a couple of songs to it, which felt very much right for that world. So, yeah, and we enlisted a couple of other new bandits into the family, because BMX Bandits, I think, compared to a lot of bands, there's a lot of bands, if you go and see them, they may have lost a member along the way and replaced someone, but generally you're going to see the same 4 or 5 people.
Sure.
With BMX Bandits, we're like an extended musical family more than a traditional group.
Yeah, so, collective.
Yeah, and so that's what it feels like. It feels like, bringing 2 new people into the extended family.
I mean, I was trying to work out like the list of past members. It's ridiculously long, right?
Yeah, not quite as long as The Fall.
Sure.
And but yeah, and I think also generally most of the ex-bandits or people who still will occasionally pop in to the kind of equation in certain ways. There's pretty much good feeling between people who have been in the band and
right.
permanent. It's not. I get the feeling sometimes in The Fall there might have been not the best feeling between by Mark E. Smith and certain people who weren't in the band anymore.
Yeah. So I mean, how is it different then? So you said it's much more musically ambitious. How's it different from the stuff from people that are familiar with your earlier stuff? How's it different?
Well, I mean, it's still very much BMX Bandits, but it's funny. I've always had the thing that a lot of my favorite bands were bands I would buy the record and would put it on, and there maybe would be some things that felt very familiar, but there would be things I'd just be like, "What? What? I didn't see that coming." And I've always wanted BMX Bandits to have a bit of that, even an album I Can See Over Your Shoulder, Getting Dirty. That was the
Yeah.
kind of first album we really started using things like string arrangements and things. And at that time, that wasn't a typical indie pop thing to be using string arrangements. And if there were strings and records, they tended just to be kind of almost, I guess, reinforcing kind of chords that were there. We weren't doing anything particularly ornate or illustrative. And we tried to do a bit in that album, and we've kind of brought it back with Dreamers in the Run. I guess a lot of music I like has a kind of orchestral pop feel to it. Not all. I mean, I like a lot of very simple, primitive, minimalist music. But I also like kind of a lot of orchestral pop. And one of the first reviews that came in, and I've generally been someone who tended not to even read reviews. But I don't know. I just sort of thought, yeah, it's why be frightened of these things? Just read them. And it wasn't because they were good or bad. I didn't read good reviews either. But if one of the first reviews that came in said that the finished product was sort of like a combination of Scott 4, which I guess many people would see as Scott Walker's album Scott 4, as being the pinnacle of orchestral pop, and the Care Bears. And yeah, I liked that. And of course, I don't know if the reviewer was thinking of this, but actually the music in the Care Bears movie was written by John Sebastian of the Lovin' Spoonful and Carole King, and real pop greats. So they maybe didn't even mean that. They were maybe just meaning it was a cuddly, slightly cartoony thing to it, which I would also take on board. But because when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, I sort of get that. I get what you're saying. So yeah, I think it was kind of bringing in the kind of orchestral pop thing. The last few albums before this, I like, working really fast. And so yeah, from the album My Chain onwards, most of the tracks you hear on most of those records would be like 5 hours max, including mixing it.
The whole album? Oh, really? Well, I mean, I read
Each
somewhere
track.
that, you said you don't polish anything, you just get it done and move on, and that's it. Yeah. So
Yeah, well, it's not even not polishing. It's like I really, really care about it. And I'm really, really, but I still think you can work fast. I mean, I remember actually, it's always good when you find out kind of heroes kind of back up your kind of ethos. You didn't know that that's how they work. But I remember watching a program after David Bowie had died, and the people in his band were sort of saying like he would, arrive not that early in the morning, and we would work on a song, and around about 4 or 5 o'clock, it'd be like, okay, let's all go home now. That song's finished. And he'd be like, really? Is that? And I just always liked that kind of spontaneity.
yeah.
And Dreamers in the Run, we tried to keep that, but there was another side to it which we really had to pay proper attention, because we didn't want the arrangements that Andrew was writing for the strings and the other instruments we were bringing in. We didn't want them to be slapdash, and Andrew wasn't wanting it to be like arrangements that he would be going away and just doing that I had no input in. It was very much, I was hearing kind of melodic lines and things that he would be wanting to take into account. And so he was wanting to make sure things were in my taste, rather than being, okay, here comes the strings people. They're just going to do their thing. And that's not really our department. It was very much hands-on. And I also worked with a woodwind arranger called JJ Lozano from New York. And again, we were very, very, focusing in on tiny details when we were doing that stuff. So, a lot of the kind of body of the song stuff, maybe was done a bit faster than some bands would be working. But yeah, I think it was just the nature of it. It wouldn't have been appropriate to be kind of trying to do tracks in the kind of, when you're using things like traditional kind of pop instruments and kind of Moog and Korg synthesizers and Mellotron kind of samples and things like that. You can work a bit faster. You can go, what I really hear is some Mellotron choir or some blah blah blah, and you press a button and that sounds sort of there. And you can just tweak it a bit and tweak the EQs and the echoes and reverbs, delays, and all that. But you can work pretty fast. I hate the thing of, if you're recording something, and I've had this experience, you're recording something, you go, I really want to hear this, and you go, okay, we'll just get that sorted. And an hour and a half later, you're still, things are getting all set up.
Around.
Go, it loses the thing. It's a bit like if you were painting and you suddenly realised you'd run out of the red that you wanted to use for something, and you had to take the train into town, buy the tube of red and come back. The inspiration might have slightly you diluted.
Sure. I get that. Well, obviously works. That's great. All right, let's go right back to the start. So early 80s, Scotland, right? Band called the Pretty Flowers, a kind of a supergroup. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I know. It's sort of a thing that usually bands would do later in their career. They would form a kind of a super group. But yeah, it's funny because even this relates to Dreamers on the Run, because I always sort of thought we were kind of a band of dreamers, and that band of dreamers included myself and Norman Blake, Teenage Fan Club, Hi-Fi Sean Dixon, who went on to form Soup Dragons and is now making beautiful records with David McCalmont and mix and stuff for other people.
Really?
And yeah, I mean the stuff he's doing with David McCalmont's some of my favorite music of the last decade. I think it's really, really beautiful. And he does remixes for people like Erasure and Soft Cell and a whole bunch of people. And there was Francis McKee, who went on to be in the Vaselines. And it's kind of funny because we were I sort of think we were kind of what some people would have thought of as being weirdos and kind of outsiders. And we sort of found strength in each other and encouraged each other's kind of notions and dreams. And yeah, all these years later, because that would be 1982, 83 that we started doing kind of Pretty Flower stuff. And all these years later, all of us are still doing it.
Yeah.
We're all still we're still all dreamers on the run, and
no one went into civilian life. Yeah.
It's that sort of thing of, I guess, recently a book about Lawrence came out, Lawrence from Felt, Go-Kart Mozart, Denim, and he's again like that. It's like, how well would he actually be able to function in the real world?
Sure.
And it's not a kind of showbiz thing, because like Lawrence, I don't have lots of money. I've never earned lots of money. Some of my friends have done a lot better that way than I have, but we've not been able to quit making music. And for a while I worked in broadcasting for about 10 years in the kind of mid-90s to the mid-2000s, but I was still making music as well. And a lot of what I was doing in broadcasting was also like playtime, to be honest. I was like involved in making, in 3 years, involved in making 300 live music shows called The Beat Room, which would, lots of really amazing guests on from around the world, people like Cornelius and Momus and Peaches and Gonzalez and Feist and Yola Tango and the Pastels, and just, so many great people. Yeah, we made 300 music shows and for years, and people went, wow, that must be really hard going. You're going, are you kidding? It's like playtime.
Sure. Yeah.
And what I've got a TV show, and I can persuade the BBC to fly one of my favourite singers, Kahimi Kari, over from Japan, so we can do a pop music show with her. You know, it's
Mm.
like
Mm.
that.
Who's that singer?
Kahimi Kari. She was I mean, I think she's still making some music, but not as much. But
Mm.
yeah, in the kind of late 1990s, early 2000s, she made a lot of records with people like Cornelius and Momus,
Okay. Mm.
and yeah, really great kind of electronic-y pop records that were kind of, I guess, tipping her hat to people like Serge Gainsbourg and stuff like that. There was definitely a kind of Jane Birkin
Mm.
vibe to it, but in a kind of 21st century way. Yeah, so that's it. But you
Check out.
saying, "Oh, who's that?" is actually a good point because yeah, we had this freedom that we weren't just having to put on people that everybody would have already heard of. We were getting to put
Yeah.
people on, like when we'd Feist on. Nobody knew who Feist was.
Right. Yeah.
She
Yeah.
turned up with Peaches and Gonzalez and was
Mm.
and went on to be a big thing. The same, like that was, I think, well, we'd White Stripes on, and I think that maybe was our first British. Pretty sure it was the first British TV
Oh wow.
appearance that we recorded. I think the one with Later went out first, but we recorded just before that. And
Mm-mm.
so yeah, with a lot of people on that we were wanting people to hear.
Right. That's
It was
great. Yeah. 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 So how did that evolve into BMX Bandits?
well, I guess there came a point where that show finished and I was working on things which were a lot of fun. I was working on Top of the Pop Saturday, which was the kind of Saturday morning version of Top of
Oh,
the Pops aimed at kind of slightly younger audience, but it
what
was the same
what did
sort
you
of
do on
people.
that?
I was an assistant producer. They
Oh,
often that would be like producer on the floor, which means you're not the floor manager, but you're the person kind of liaising with the artist. And if there's any kind of communication from the gallery, that you need to say, oh, there's going to be a script change here or whatever, and they really need someone to go in and see the presenters rather than just talk down
mm.
the ear. Also wrangling the bands and other guest stars because Top of Fox Saturday was strange because it there was 3 hours of television, which was called the Saturday Show, and
Mm.
then it changed to Top of the Pop Saturday, but it was all done in the same studio live. So for some like 4.5 hours of live TV, you'd be working
Wow.
solidly that morning, and it's
Wow.
kind of fun because you would have people that seem in a very different world from what I generally would be like the cheeky girls and S Club and Beyonce and
Oh
Girls
wow.
Aloud and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And you get a kind of insight into that world. And most people, to be honest, most people are pretty nice or professional enough to appear nice.
Right. Were
Occasionally, you
there
would have
any real
Westlife
arseholes? Were there any real
or
arseholes?
Westlife, but
Westlife.
not just as people in show business. I would genuinely say I think they're the worst human beings I've ever met.
What did they do
And
that
and
was so bad?
I met like the Boyzone guys, and they were all
Yeah.
perfectly nice.
Sure.
I had lunch with Ronan, who's a nice chap.
Sure. Yeah. What was what?
But I mean, it's a kind of dark story. I don't know, but I mean, I only had to deal with them once, but I
Yeah.
was so close to going. Do you know? I probably will lose my job, but I really, really would like to just like, punch one of them. I'm not a violent guy.
No. No.
But they were so horrible to the kids.
Oh wow.
N On camera, they were like all thumbs up, arms around the kids,
Mm.
hey, hey, hey. But as soon as you were off camera, they were just horrible. And it went way beyond that. They were just really, just,
Oh,
I mean, maybe since then they've saw the light. It was a long time ago. It was almost 20 years
sure.
ago. But I genuinely thought, if there is a hell,
Yeah.
they should
Westlife
start
are
packing their bags because
there.
I think we're going there. It kind of made me feel better about not liking their music.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I would meet people who are really, well, their music wasn't my thing, and that's totally cool, who would be really actually pretty lovely. And you'd go, oh
Yeah.
man, I feel a little bit bad,
Yeah, yeah. Um, uh, were you a fan of the film BMX Bandits? Is that why it's named after?
I've never seen it. I understand that Nicole Kidman plays me. Um,
Yes, yes, she does. Yeah.
and no, I've never seen it,
Oh,
and I've never
really?
been on
That's
a
great.
bicycle.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, never been on a bicycle.
Oh,
Well,
it's a good
actually,
film.
that's slightly not true. I did go for cycling lessons, maybe about 5 years ago, and so up to that point, I'd never been on a bicycle, and then I went for cycling lessons, and this I can't actually say it, dyspraxic.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mm,
so um, and that doesn't affect everybody cycling, but some people it makes it a bit more tricky. And
yeah.
yeah, my cycling teacher, who was a proper qualified cycling teacher, after about I think about 3 or 4 lessons, was like, "I think you're maybe actually getting slightly worse with it each lesson. Maybe it's not for you."
I
And he
mean,
said
yeah.
he'd never been defeated before.
Well, that's something to be proud of, I guess. Yeah, yeah. So I
So
mean,
that
like,
was a bit of a
yeah,
gag on the Beach Boys because Brian Wilson, the big youth trend when the Beach Boys started was surfing and Brian Wilson didn't surf.
that's true.
The big
That's
youth
right.
trend when we started was BMX bikes, and I had never been on a bike.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, okay. Well, you mentioned the Beach Boys, so I mean, even like back then, the the music was kind of out of time, right? From what else was going on at the time, kind of hinting back to earlier sounds. So you mentioned the Beach Boys. What else were you into or influenced by?
I mean, I was, and I've been recently watching a lot of things like Muppet stuff and Sesame Street stuff with my daughter, and I loved like songs from things like that. People like Paul Williams, who wrote the songs for Bugsy Malone and wrote some
Mm.
songs for the Carpenters, like "We've Only Just Begun." I wrote the Kermit's theme tune, "The Rainbow Connection." Um, you know, a lot of songs written for, I guess, what people might think is kids stuff. Also, the Sherman Brothers, who wrote the songs for Mary Poppins and Chitty
Mm.
Chitty Bang Bang, and a lot of the other Disney songs like Jungle Book songs and stuff. I loved these as much as I loved a lot of pop music, but I did love a lot of pop music as well. I loved like David Bowie, and I loved Mark Bolan, and I loved the Beatles and the Beach Boys. But I was never really a rock guy. I'm not a very manly man,
Mm. Mm.
and I came from an era and a place where you were expected to be that.
Mm.
And I think a new generation of musicians, including people like Stephen Pastel and Edwyn Collins and myself and a good few others,
Mm.
uh, when we first appeared, we weren't welcomed with open arms. And it's funny because younger people who like all of those bands, I think, oh, well, kind of sweet and lovely and very welcoming. But at the time, a lot of that kind of Vaselines were the same. You'd be getting hot glasses thrown at you. When we played in Aberdeen, we'd sometimes have to be sneaked out the back door, or the cops would come to make sure we were okay because like people really wanted blood.
It's
And
because
it
people were
was,
so seeing you as like effeminate, wimpy, kind of that kind of
yeah, I
thing.
think it was like you were confused. Actually, Chloe and I moved into a flat in the West End of Glasgow quite a few years ago, and it was in this really nice little kind of uh, like area above things like a organic tea house and like clock repair shop and a second-hand
I know what you
record
mean. Yeah,
shop
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff like that. And it was
yeah.
the kind of flats were above that. And this guy came across the door and to our door and introduced himself, which is nice to do to your new neighbours. But he said, "I just came across because I wanted to apologise to you." Um, in Aberdeen in 1985, I threw a pint glass at you because I could tell he was just a little bit older than me. And he goes, "I came to see you play. I didn't know any of your music. Um, and you were on stage and you had a little satchel and a flowery shirt and you were
Mm.
eating a banana. And I was really, really confused. and I didn't know what to do. And so I
Yeah.
threw my pint glass at you, and I was like, was it full? And he's going, yeah, it was. And I mean, I used to get drenched and that sort of stuff. And I mean,
That's
as I say, it wasn't
insane.
alone. A lot of time it'd be just verbal abuse.
Mm,
And he's going, and I'm really ashamed of my behavior, but I was just so confused because I hadn't
wow.
seen it. And I think now people would go, what? That
Yeah.
would seem kind of unreal. But it was a different time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I
Um,
don't know. I think that kind of toxic masculinity is still there, isn't it? It's there. It's
it
there.
is. I think people pretend it's not,
Mm,
but it is there. And I think for a lot of people, um, it's really difficult to escape, and it's deeply ingrained in what we've learned from, you know, male role models sometimes in their family or just like peer pressure. You know,
mm,
I was very sort of lucky when I was a kid. I don't think I'm really like this now, but I really had the arrogance of youth. And I don't think I mean, you have to ask other people. I don't think I was terribly obnoxious with it, but I had the thing of I went to what was considered to be the roughest school in Lanarkshire at that time.
mm.
Norman Blake went there as well. And when kind of rough guys kind of came up to me and tried to, do a bit of kind of, I guess, threatening behavior. And, I would go, like, who are you? Or what's your name? I would introduce myself as Nancy. And Norman said, some of his first memories of me at Bellshill Academy was seeing me at Smoker's Corner wearing a Sherlock Holmes pipe, no, wearing a Sherlock Holmes hat and having the Sherlock Holmes pipe. And then later, kind of standing with a kind of foppish handkerchief and sniffing snuff,
Snuff. Oh wow. Oh wow.
which I mean is absolutely awful. I wouldn't recommend that to
No.
to anybody. But at the
So I mean,
time,
why, where did that come from?
it was almost like if I annoyed them for being a certain way, I wanted to be more of that the next day rather than be
Right.
less.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It felt kind of empowering. And I guess it's a cliche, and I did come to blows sometimes. But a lot of time, bullies are kind of cowards. And the reason they're bullies is because, they're frightened that someone might spot their weaknesses.
Mm, mm, mm.
So if you kind of face up to them and you seem completely unafraid, if you kind of, if someone says, who are you? And you go, well, I'm Nancy, and you're a kind of quite big guy, they're like, what? He wouldn't be saying that if he was
Right.
frightened of us. He's not
Yeah.
intimidated. And the
Yeah.
next line you say is, so are you keen on sports? We're
Right.
just like, what?
But
And
why?
Norman,
Why weren't you intimidated? Why weren't you afraid of these guys?
I don't know. And I did eventually,
Ah.
there was a couple of times I got serious kickings,
Mm,
but
mm,
it wasn't going to stop me. And I'm not really, I think now, I think, people could bully me now, but then I was a bit bully proof.
mm.
And yeah, there's a song on the new album, Dreamers in the Rum, called My Name is Douglas, which is sort of about
I
that
wanted
kind
to
of,
ask about that. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
something not quite right, I think is the lyrics. I mean, is
yeah.
that how you see yourself?
Well, it's that sort of thing of reclaiming things that people
Mm,
try and throw at you as if they try and damage you with stuff, kind of slings and arrows. But if you
mm,
kind of reclaim it, because that was a phrase I would hear a lot, not from my family and not
mm,
from, my close friends, but so many times, even people that sort of like me and things would go, you're not right. You're not
mm,
quite right. Or Big
mm,
Douglas, he's not quite right. Or Big Nancy, he's not quite right. And I would hear it so much. And it's funny, I think now it's a much more terrifying, or it seems to me from the outside, a much more terrifying environment for young people who don't fit in because
mm.
of the whole kind of pressures of social media. I think have really ramped up that whole peer pressure
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And I mean, I'm not saying it's going to change things for MD, but songs can sometimes, even if they touch one person and it encourages them in some way. But
yeah.
I kind of wanted to send out a sort of thing of going, it's all right. And later on, I discovered, yeah, I wasn't quite right in a way. I'm kind
Mm.
of neurodivergent in some sort of way, and I'm not a typical guy, and I've
Mm.
got certain issues, but most people do. But those things are also been my superpowers. The reason I
Sure.
made lots of records, and people, who I admire, have maybe said nice things or wanted to work with me and things, are because I'm not quite right.
Sure. 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 It's
But
interesting, like the anti-macho stuff. I'm hearing a lot of parallels with Kurt Cobain, who, BMX Bandits are kind of forever intertwined with the story of Nirvana since Kurt, wore the t-shirt and everything. I mean, do you think that was
yeah,
what
I
he
mean,
saw in the band, that kind of
oh,
anti-macho thing?
I think so, but I feel I have to at this point, anytime because there's a quote, uh, from Kurt saying if he could be in any other band, it would
Yeah,
be BMX Bandits,
that's
and I
so
always
good
try and
though.
point out it's a beautiful quote and it's a lovely
Yeah,
thing, and I'm so glad he said that. I'm so glad he wore their t-shirts because we still sell that design way more than
it's
if
a
he
good
hadn't
one
said
though.
it.
It's a good one. Yeah,
But his favorite band were the Vaselines and
right.
possibly Shonen Knife. They were
Mm,
his favorite bands. He loved
mm,
Teenage Fan Club. He loved the Pastels.
mm,
As far as I know, he liked BMX Bandits. He seemed to like BMX Bandits. He wore our
mm,
T-shirt, said nice things about us. But for me, I think because I've thought about why didn't he say the Vaselines? Why didn't he say Teenage Fan Club? Why didn't he say Shonen Knife? Because I think those bands meant more to him. But I think the reason is Eugene and Norman were both in BMX Bandits, and he loved
mm.
both of those guys. He
Right.
knew them way better than I got to know. I didn't really, I met Kurt a few times, but I can't say I really got to know him. We had one
Mm.
kind of really good chat about music, and we met a few
Was
times.
he starstruck to meet you?
I think he was much more struck to meet Eugene, but it was the last time he played. I'd met him a couple of times very briefly, but it
Mm,
was just kind of, hi, how you kind
mm,
of thing. The last time he played in Glasgow, Eugenius and Shonen Knife were opening for them, and
mm,
they'd said to Gordon, who was a former BMX bandit and was in Eugenius, "Oh, it's Douglas here. Would you invite him up? It'd be nice to see him."
mm,
And so that was all. But I think the reason he said that was Eugene and Norman were both in BMX Bandits. And I know both of them used to say, "Oh, it's so much fun being in BMX Bandits." And the pressure's not on you. The pressure's on the big guy, me being the big guy. And you
right.
can just have fun, play music with your friends. I think, not that it's not a compliment, but I think that's what it would have been. I think he
Mm,
probably went, "Oh, I'd love to be in a band where the spotlight's not on me. Everybody's not staring at me and analysing everything I do.
mm,
I could just be up there having fun playing some music with some people who are into records, and it'd be fun to hang out with them."
mm,
And
mm,
I mean, I don't know that, but to me that
mm,
makes sense. But
mm.
that would be the
Okay.
reason. And because both of them, people who he really admired, had said that they had so much fun being in
Mm.
BMX bands and the pressure that
Sure.
wasn't on them, he would have went,
Sure.
"Wow, I would like to be in that position where I don't have all that pressure, not the eyes of the world on me all the time."
Mm,
And he certainly
mm.
wouldn't have had the eyes of the world on him all the time if he was in BMX bands.
Well, I mean, saying that, I mean, how much impact did his support have at the time?
I mean, I think I think the impact for us was a little bit more delayed.
Mm,
Um, and I think that was really down to the rise of social media. I think the impact for people like Eugene and Norman, I think that was really big, particularly probably, I mean, that's why the Bastards ended up getting back together, was,
oh, really?
I don't,
Mm,
I don't think, well, Kurt had sent a message saying, would the Vaseline support them in Edinburgh? And they hadn't been playing together for years.
mm,
And so we had to get together and learn the songs again.
mm.
And, Norman and myself went through with them in a van. And you could see Kurt was so excited about meeting Eugene and Francis.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Norman or I were particularly, it wasn't like AMD and Nirvana were like rude to us, but the people who were excited to see.
Mm,
Um, were, or particularly Kurt was excited to see, was Eugene and Francis.
Oh, I'm sure he was
I
excited
think for him
to
that was.
see you as well. I'm sure he was.
I'm not even
Yeah.
sure he would. I think he might be at that point would have just thought we were just a couple of pals of, because I don't think we identified ourselves with, hello, and I'm also in a band, it's just, so yeah, and it was lovely to see because, Norman and I were, of course, we were big friends of Eugene and Francis, but we were also real fans of the Vaselines. And we remember being at gigs where a third of the audience loved it and two-thirds of the audience didn't, and
because they'd
always
heard it
kind of
on like
going,
Nirvana Unplugged or whatever, and they'd come to see you.
yeah. So, and but now it was suddenly like, Kurt giving it the stuff that kind of blessing made people listen again and made a new audience listen for the first time and go, wow, these are great songs. This is how did the world miss these records?
Sure.
And,
Also, we talk a lot on the podcast about the divide between kind of the UK and the US at this time, and how there was kind of a battle between them. But there seemed to be like a really nice reciprocal relationship going on between like the Glasgow indie scene and then what was going on in Olympia with K Records.
Yeah.
And how did that? It seemed a really nice kind of thing going on. How did that come about?
Calvin Johnson and Stephen Pastel were kind of the guys who built a bridge, I think, there. Stephen and David Keegan from Shop Assistants started up a label called 53rd and Third. And
that's what you put your first records out on, right?
Yeah, that's what we put our first record out. The Vaselines put our first record out. The pre-teenage fan club band, the Boy Hairdressers, put out their record on. But also on that label were Beat Happening, which is Calvin Johnson from K Records.
Oh, they were releasing it in the UK. But okay.
And a lot of those records were the reason Kurt, I think, found, the Vaselines and people like, Amelia's various bands was, again, because, Tallulah Gosh were on 53rd and Third. So, he was, getting to hear BMX Bandits and Boy Hairdressers and particularly the Vaselines and that sort of stuff via Calvin Johnson, who was, it's
so
like
were they
him
just
and
like
Stephen
mailing tapes to each other and stuff like that? Is that
mailing tapes and releasing each other's records and making mixtapes for friends? Making mixtapes for friends was always such a big thing, and I mean, I was always kind of, to blow my own trumpet, would considered to be one of the kings of a mixtape. It's like, Chris.
What's the secret to a good
from,
mixtape? We talk quite a lot about mixtapes on the podcast. What's the secret to a good one?
I think, follow your heart and don't try to do things that you think are going to impress because they're cool and obscure. They may be cool and obscure, but follow your heart, make it entertaining, and also give it a shape. A bit like if you watch a TV show or a film, give it a kind of shape. Don't make it like all the same all the way through.
You've got to tell a story, right? Yeah,
I think so. But yeah, Chris from Bell and Sebastian and a few people who've had my mixtapes have said this, but he says almost every DJ set he still plays like 3 or 4 things.
That's great.
Every time, but would have been on the first mixtape I ever gave him.
Wow.
And I remember Isabel, funnily enough, who used to be in Bell and Sebastian, seen her playing live, and one night she did 4 cover versions in her set, and all of them had been on a mixtape. But I'd given her.
For example, can you tell us one of the songs?
One of them was Bedazzled, the Peter Cook and Dudley Moore track.
Okay.
Which is
I
an
don't know
amazing
it,
song.
but yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, it's one of those things you go, Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, is it just go, well, it's a kind of comedy record, but it's been recently, well, maybe not recently, it's probably 10 years ago or something. It was like covered by Nick Cave,
Oh, wow.
Isabel covered.
Yeah.
It's a really great piece of music. And Dudley Moore was an incredibly, accomplished musician. He could have been like a top, conductor or a top jazz musician. And the guy, Bill Wells, who, is a kind of outsider jazz musician up here, was working out the chords and the arrangement for Isabel. And, Bill's one of those guys who knows all the chords and all that, but he was like, that is the most complex. It doesn't sound like it. It's just every chord in it I'd never actually came across before.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Bedazzled by written by
Cool.
Dudley Moore.
Cool. Well, I make a mixtape for every episode of the podcast, so I'll put it on there so people can have
Oh,
a listen.
definitely.
You mentioned Tallulah Gosh just now, and you called your first album C86. I mean, what was your take on that scene? Were you taking the piss, or was it?
Yeah, we were taking a piss. Not taking a piss if
Okay.
anybody was on it. We were taking a piss of the
Yeah.
enemy. I mean,
Right.
because I used to always think, well, the enemy sounds the same as the enemy.
Sure.
And for
Sure.
BMX Bandits, they pretty much are because, even like journalists who wrote for the enemy would kind of say to me, oh, Douglas, I've been trying to get our editors to let us do a piece on BMX Bandits. And in the early the kind of 85, 86, 87 kind of days, we were sort of a band whose singles would be like #1 in indie charts or pretty close to that sort of thing regularly. And we'd be on, nighttime Radio 1 really regularly. But they would go, they won't let us write about BMX Bandits. They just won't. Broadsheets would write about us and quite often be very generous, but we just had this thing of no, no, no. So yeah, for us, we knew we weren't going to be included on their thing, and so as a kind of silly joke, but I was like, well, if we don't want us in their version, we'll bring out our own version and we'll do every track. This one, every track will be BMX Bandits, no one else. And I mean, the enemy kind of turned around when we joined Creation and made the record Serious Drugs. That was a kind of a turning point.
Yeah. Yeah. So that
And it
was
was
championed by
interesting.
Enemy, was it?
Yeah, Enemy
Yeah.
Sounds, Melody Maker, they all really championed that. And it was a funny thing because Alan McGee sort of said to me that the reason he wanted to sign BMX Bandits partly was that song, he heard that song, but it was partly he had an idea in his head that he would hate BMX Bandits, and we were just sort of a disposable joke band with this kind of wacky front man. And then he heard our records and that track and went, wait a minute, if I got this wrong, I think a lot of other people got it wrong. And this is him. This is Alan's voice, internal voice, kind of going. And I'm the sort of guy who actually can probably get people to pay attention and listen again. And they might be surprised and go, wait a minute, that big wacky guy's actually got some good songs. And there's maybe something behind the kind of facade.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'll always be kind of grateful for that because he really did believe in the band.
Can I ask a little bit about the song? I mean, how much of it was based on experience and everything like that?
And what film? Sorry,
that's it, the song.
The
Serious
song. The
Drugs.
song.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said the film. Yeah, the song. It was totally. I was dating a medical student in Aberdeen, going back to Aberdeen again, and she discovered that these tablets, and being a medical student, she was very interested. I think she was in first year at the time. She wanted to see what the tablets were, and she discovered they were antidepressants. And she was like, "Oh, you don't need those tablets to make you feel better. You need my love. I'll make you feel better." I'm slightly paraphrasing, but that's the basic gist of it.
Yeah.
And then cut to a month later, and she was saying to me, Douglas, I think you maybe need some stronger tablets. And I think this is one of the things that sort of define a lot of people who are artists or make records or stuff like that. A lot of people would be upset with that and kind of just try and forget about it and get it out of their mind. But I think the person who writes songs goes, wait a minute. That's a bit devastating, but I think I could get something out of this.
Yeah.
And, and now that's what I do sort of think. At the time, you're going to go, that's kind of devastating. But I did think it was funny. I was going home in the train, kind of feeling, sort of upset and dejected, but also kind of giggling because it just felt so, you need some stronger tablets. And I was like, it just felt like a scene from a musical. So I had this idea of, she said, and I said, I don't think I can take it much longer. And then, the female character, and she said, maybe your tablet should be stronger, get some serious drugs. And I just thought it's kind of tragic, but it's also sort of comic.
That's
There's a, there's a,
that's great.
there's a bit of humor, and I didn't want it musically to sound kind of depressing and heavy and
Mm,
earnest. So I wanted to do something that sounded really melodic and beautiful, and sort of almost like the music had a kind of healing quality.
mm,
A bit like, I guess, it doesn't sound like a Beach Boys record, but for me, a lot of Beach Boys records have that thing. It's like you put them on, and
mm.
they're sort of like sunshine for your soul or for your ears,
Yeah,
and you sort of feel, I feel slightly
yeah,
better now. So I wanted
yeah,
it musically to sound like that,
yeah.
and I liked the idea that people would be surprised it was BMX Bandits when you put it on. They'd go, "What? That's BMX Bandits."
Mm,
So yeah, out of these little hearts, you
yeah,
sometimes get great opportunities
yeah.
if you
It's
happen
great.
to write songs.
Sure. You say you talk about Alan McGee and Creation. So you were signed to them during the boom years, pretty much. I mean, was it as anarchic and drug fueled as it was made out to be
Yes,
in those offices? Yeah. Come on, give
yes,
us some
very
stories.
much
Were
so.
they really pushing around
Oh,
tea trolleys of drugs on a Friday afternoon and all of that?
I don't remember tea trolleys, drugs. See, the funny thing is, I haven't had an alcoholic drink since I was 17.
Oh wow.
I don't, I don't smoke. I've never taken recreational drugs. I just no
Mm,
interest. It's sort of
mm.
like I'm there already,
Sure, sure.
and I think the world would regret if I decided I wanted to take up any of these habits. So yeah, I was kind of looking in away from the outside, and I didn't feel pressure to do any of the things because, well, I mean, I grew up in a town where like all of that stuff, and I was in bands long enough where if I had felt pressure, it's like where everybody else in the band was partying and getting off her face at certain times. I don't mean it with kind of creation or taking lots of drugs. Just like being young guys getting drunk because you're on the road and having fun. I would be in the hotel room watching an episode of Miss Marple or something, very often.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, there was a lot of, Friday afternoon, at a certain point, everybody stopped working, people were dancing on the tables. And, I remember being in Alan's jacuzzi with like various members of Primal Scream and some young ladies who
Yeah,
um, Primal Scream seemed to be quite familiar with.
sure.
Not sure how long they'd met them, but or how long they knew them. And
Sure.
um and there was lots of kind of substances getting snorted off the side of jacuzzi and bottles of Jack Daniels around. And Alan, who I love, is kind of going, in a year's time you're going to be totally into all this. And I was
Yeah,
like, no, I think you'll find in a year's time, you'll be kind of sober and I'll convert you. You won't convert
sure.
me. And I
Sure.
didn't convert him, but
Yeah, no.
sadly, in some ways, but probably, I think Alan would be the first to say, probably saved his life. A year later, he was like clean and sober.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Also speaking of creations that Oasis supported BMX Bandits earlier
Yeah.
in their career, right? How was that?
Yeah. I mean, it was fine. I mean, they were the opening act, and then 18 Wheeler were on, and then we were on. So we were headliners, and the kind of special guests were 18 Wheeler and the kind of the newcomers that no one was interested in were
Yeah.
Oasis. They hadn't
Yeah.
released a record at that point. And to be honest, very often when you were going on stage, it was that sort of thing. You'd be playing some um, university union, and most people would be down like in the bar or playing billiards or pool somewhere. And, 30 people would be watching Oasis,
Right. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and probably years later, loads of you people would be massive fans and miss the
Sure.
opportunity to see them.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically it was a case of I hadn't heard them, and Alan had called me up and said, "You guys are going on tour. As a personal favor, would you take them out on tour?"
Mhm.
And Alan was so generous and supportive to the band. I was like, "Yeah, of course." And he was like, "Oh, good." He's going, like, I've asked quite a few other bands on the label, and none of them
Oh,
have got
really?
like, not that he'd heard them,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
felt like, well, why would you? But so
Yeah.
I can't remember how many days we did, maybe six, maybe slightly more.
Mm.
Um, Yeah, and on that tour, I was the only person that got in a fight. And
How did you get into a fight? What happened?
I mean, it's just silly, and I'm not proud of it, but it's just kind of
Sure.
funny. But it was in Newcastle, and some guy was doing a kind of bizarre thing. He wasn't from Newcastle. He was a student there. He was kind of quite posh, and he was kind of going, "Could I have one of your t-shirts?" And I was like, yeah, you can buy one." He's going, "I mean, I wouldn't buy one. I mean, the design's a bit shit." He's going, "But I'd wear it. I'd wear it. I'd be doing you a favor, and I'd wear it." And they're like, "Listen, if we give them away, we lose money because we have to
Yeah.
pay for them. So I can't give you a t-shirt free." And he just was following me around, going, "Yeah, I can't believe that, you jocks are so tight and all that. You won't even give me a t-shirt and I'm going to advertise it and all that. I'll be wearing it. I'm a good looking guy. I'm kind of cool. I'll be wearing your t-shirt. And, I'm doing you a favor." And it just went
Yeah.
on and on and on. And honestly, people would tell you I'm a very even-tempered person. But at just a point where it was almost like I went into some sort of blackout. And the next thing I knew, people were holding me and he was on the floor. So, but the
Wow.
next day, when we arrived at the sound check, the Oasis guys were all going, "Sound, big man." So we heard you popped him, you knocked him in the ground and all that. They were all really impressed by it. Meanwhile, I was a bit like, "Oh dear, that's not like
Yeah.
me." Yeah, but
Did you get on with them? We've got an ongoing debate on the podcast about whether Noel Gallagher's a complete wanker or not. I mean, did you get on with the boys?
I think Liam's a really lovely guy, and I
Nicely
think
put.
Bonehead's a really lovely guy. And
Okay.
I've met both Liam and Noel about 10 years after that. I've not seen him
Mm.
since. And yeah, it was honestly within about a week of each other. It was so strange. One of them came along, Liam came along to the BBC studios when we were filming Top Up Saturday because his girlfriend at that time was on the show.
Mm.
And he could not have been lovelier. And he was, asking about the kid, asking about the other guys in the band, kind of,
Mm.
for the benefit of other people in the show, doing the kind of thing, "Oh, me and the big man, we go way back." And,
Mm.
kids on the show were going, "My dad says you're mental." And he was being lovely to the kids and funny.
Mm.
And, I know people that have worked in his crew and they all talk about, how generous, and sweet he is. And he has obviously he's got his kind of persona
Sure.
thing. But my experience of him, again, I know people that live, I don't know if that's where he lives now, but we used to live near a kind of park and he would, give the ice cream man like a big
Mhm.
dod of cash on sunny days and tell, give all the kids free ice cream for
Oh
a day,
wow.
you
Yeah.
know. And so I met Noel the next week at tea in the park. I was running the interview tent for the BBC and I
Mm.
was walking Noel over to the interview tent and I was like, "Do you remember me?" He's like,
Mm.
"Yeah, I remember me. I remember you throwing me out your fucking dressing room for smoking." And then he didn't speak to me at all.
Oh
Now, the
wow.
story behind that is people could still smoke indoors. As I was saying earlier,
Sure.
I've never smoked. We were on quite a long tour. We were doing other dates apart from the dates at Oasis. And everybody was in our dressing room and it was getting really smoky. And I was really getting worried about my throat
Mm.
because we were in the middle of a tour and I was beginning to feel I was losing my voice. And so I kind of said, "Listen, could people maybe go into the other dressing room if you want to smoke? It's really
Mm.
going for my throat."
Mm.
And like I remember like Liam and Bonehead and the other guys all being, "Yeah, sound, no problem." And it was just like everybody just was like, "Of course, it's not
As you
even
would, right?
an
It's a very
issue."
reasonable request, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm maybe just imagining it, but I remember at the time thinking, "No seems pissed off." And then I
Right.
thought, 10 years later, multi-millionaire, multi-millionaire,
Yeah.
incredibly successful pop star is still holding on to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Okay.
going,
I think that
it's
that
kind of a
tells us what we
bizarre
need to
thing.
know. Yeah.
It's just, I do think it's really funny. I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure he has got his nice. I also know people who have been on his crew and things like that who didn't love it. But, I'm sure there's people out there who would go, "Oh, it was just time, no, was really kind to me or whatever."
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's Westlife.
Sure. No. He's not. He's not Westlife bad. Got it. You talk and you have talked a lot in the past about mental health and stuff like that. I mean, how much of that side of you goes into your songs?
I guess an awful lot. I try and always address it with some sort of humor and some sort of sense of hope.
Mm, mm,
You know, because I just sort of think even if one track sounds like there's not that much hope in it, and it sounded really, really sad, then the next track would try and offer some sort of hope. But generally, even within the track, I would try and offer some sort of hope or light or something so it didn't, you know, I think, when people go and see BMX Bandits live, generally they go away with a smile on their face.
mm.
But it's funny, I'll think to myself, man, I've sung some really quite depressing songs and songs that deal with, you know, prescribed antidepressants and, kind of sometimes quite difficult stuff. But the overall thing, which I like, is sending people away going, I feel better than I did
Mm,
when I engaged with this, and I'd
sure.
like that to be the same with our records, that people put on a record and they feel better at the end of it rather than at the end of it going, man, life, life really is shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was feeling bad, but I feel worse now.
Well, I think it does do that because it's got the poppy element, but it's got the depth to it in the lyrics and stuff, right? Which is just a perfect
Yeah.
combination.
And as I say, I think most things you can bring an aspect of humor. I don't mean turn that into a joke. I mean, I think there's
Mm,
lots of humor in Beatles records and, like Beach Boys records and stuff, but it's not like they're
mm.
cracking jokes or doing kind of silly novelty stuff. It's just,
No, that's
you know,
true. That's true. But it is difficult
there's
to
lot.
put vulnerability and put yourself out there, right? Not a lot of people are willing to do that.
Well, I often have that thing of going, if I start thinking, I feel a bit uncomfortable about this, I usually think to myself, right, I'm onto something here. If I start to feel a bit uncomfortable about something, I usually go, right, rather than going, well, I won't do that, I go, right, I'm heading in the right direction.
Mm, 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 mm,
If I don't feel slightly uncomfortable or something in some way,
mm.
it's almost a bit like, well, why am I doing what what am I trying to achieve here if I'm just going through the motions?
Sure, sure. Yeah, well, I think that's what people relate to, right? That listen to it. Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, no, well, definitely, I think so. Yeah. And you did a documentary a little while ago now. I mean, how was that to be kind of followed around with the camera and stuff? Like you seem to me, I don't know, but if I'm like you seem to be someone always moving forward, always the next thing, the next thing. So to kind of take stock and
Yeah.
look back, I mean, how was that?
Well, it was interesting because by this point, I'd been quite an experienced program maker myself, and I'd
Oh, right,
been
of
involved
course,
in
yeah.
making documentaries for the BBC, later on and stuff. But one of the things I said to the guy who made the film, Jim Burns, who approached me in Monorail, and, he said about BMX Bandits records meaning a lot to him.
Mm,
And then I think maybe second or third time I met him, he sort of said he'd been thinking about making a film about BMX Bandits. He'd never made a film before, but
mm,
he had very fond memories of kind of mucking around with cine film and stuff with his granddad. And when he told me that earlier, I was like, we should start, doing some stuff like that. That brought you
mm,
happiness. And he's
sure.
like, oh yeah, I listened to you now. I decided I want to make a film. I want to make a film about BMX Bandits. What do you think? And I was like, I'm happy for you to make it. But my one condition is I'll give you as much support and availability as I possibly can. But it's your film. I don't want to see
Mm.
a second of the film
Oh, wow.
until we're sitting watching it at whatever premiere, whether it's in the premieres, you having a few friends round to your house or a sold out
Mm,
cinema or
sure.
whatever. It's got to be your film, Jim.
That takes a lot of trust, though.
Uh, well, I just sort of think, I just, I just think from even my own experience, it would be a nightmare because if I did see it, it would have been very, very hard. Not because it wasn't good, but
Mm.
just because I had done that sort of thing to a certain
Right,
extent.
you'll be
I
okay.
hadn't
Yeah,
done a
yeah. I
feature
know what you
length,
mean.
I hadn't done a feature length project, but I'm also a bit of a cinephile.
Mm.
And it would be very, very easy for me to start going, well, actually, I think maybe you should put a bit more focus on blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted
yeah,
it to be his thing
sure.
because ultimately he was investing all the time.
Yeah,
We were making records anyway. We were
yeah,
rehearsing
yeah, yeah.
anyway. Gave me
And
something to keep me out of trouble, like going for a cup of coffee with some friends while he was filming, and rather than me
sure.
sitting like getting myself into trouble in some sort of crazy way.
And when you did sit down and see it, how did you feel?
It was amazing, and it was sold out GFT Cinema, which is a big kind of art house kind of cinema one. GFT holds a few hundred people. My mum was sitting in the row behind me.
Wow.
She's no longer here, but she's in the film, and she was sitting there agreeing with herself. She was saying in films like, "Oh, well, Douglas, he wasn't like other boys," and she's going, well, "That's very true." That's she's sitting agreeing with herself.
Great.
And it was a really lovely thing, and it was also a really lovely thing. It was a lovely thing for Jim because we'd become friends as you would do. Well, I guess you'd become friends or you'd hate each other after that kind of process.
Sure,
But we'd
yeah.
become friends, and there was a lot of trust because we entered into the whole process by sort of saying, I'm going to trust you. That was the point. We started, and then it kind of led to us being big friends, and then the film was beautiful, and people laughed and cried and applauded, and were applauding Jim
Yeah.
for all his efforts and money and hours and tender loving care that he put into this project. It wasn't like a bit like making BMX Bandits records. He wasn't going to get rich from it.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Okay, I've kept you a really, really long time, and I apologize. I've got two more questions. Is that okay?
So, yeah,
All right.
no
So first of
baby
all,
waking yet, but
yes, good. So well, we mentioned earlier, Kurt famously said if he could be in any other band, it'd be in BMX Bandits. And actually, we ask every guest the same question on the podcast. So if you could have been in any other band from, let's say, from the 90s, because mostly we focus on that on the podcast, what band would you like to have been in and why?
okay, let me have a think. Because funnily enough, I have been asked this before, but I almost always say I would be in BMX Bandits.
Okay. You can say that. You can say that.
Which does feel like I'm avoiding the question, and it's not like I don't love other bands, but I do think I've been incredibly lucky. And as I say, a lot of my friends who made music or people I've become friends with have, they live a much more comfortable lifestyle, and I don't object to that. I sometimes think, oh yeah, it would be nice to not have to maybe worry about, paying your next bill and stuff like that sometimes, and have some of that stuff. But I wouldn't swap it
Mm.
for the thing that I feel I've had with BMX Bandits, kind of friendship thing, and it being like this extended family and making records that I wanted to make.
Sure.
I sometimes think if we'd been much more successful and if we'd had hits, would that have changed the course of BMX Bandits? Would we have made more records like that because we would have wanted to please the things and have the royalties coming in more fast and
Sure.
furious? But because BMX Bandits were never that successful, people liked us. We have a very loyal audience, and people in other bands say nice things about us. We've pretty much been allowed to do what we want.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
not everybody in a band, I think, has that kind of luxury.
No.
Or they certainly feel pressures that they need to kind of, deliver the next record should, be getting the same reviews that the last one did, and, if anything, better and selling more units.
That's great.
So I genuinely, there's lots of other bands.
All right. How about
honest,
if I narrow it down? Let's say you got the opportunity to play live with another band just one time. You're not in the band. You're just playing once with them live. Who would you like to have been in for one night only?
I mean, to be honest, well, it would have been something like, I saw Burt Bacharach play live a few times, and to be a guest star or something for Burt Bacharach on one song,
Yeah, that would be
sing a
cool.
song with Burt Bacharach and orchestra, or Brian Wilson and his band. And the Brian Wilson and his band one actually almost came true because there was an after party after like one of Brian's big Glasgow shows where all of the guys from his band kind of went to this kind of venue that my friend had sort of set up. and they became the house band, and myself and a few other
Oh, wow.
Glasgow people got to sing the lead vocals in Beach Boys songs with them doing all the harmonies and playing. Brian wasn't there, but I
Okay.
mean, I've met
Close
Brian a few
enough.
times. I've been
Oh,
lucky
wow.
enough to meet and interview Brian a few times, and but that felt pretty exciting. Doing The Little Girl I Once Knew with Brian Wilson's band doing all the
Sure.
harmonies for me and the backing. So
That's
that was
close enough. That's great. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I guess doing something like singing one song with Burt Bacharach as a guest star would have been a lovely thing. But
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
yeah.
All right. And finally, I read somewhere that you're good at impressions. Is this true?
Do you know, this is a funny thing. As a kid, that was my thing. I used to get sent round. I used to get sent round to classes. Norman remembers he was the year below me at primary school, Noble Primary School in Bellshill. And we would go, oh, we've got Douglas Stewart here from primary 6 going to entertain us this afternoon, boys and girls. And I would do, my little show. I'd tell some jokes, sing a song that I'd written, silly nonsense song, do some impressions, do Columbo, Frank Spencer, Dennis Healy, and stuff like that. But when my voice broke, I couldn't do any of the voices anymore. So yeah. So to be honest, I sometimes would try and do somebody now, and people just look at me and go, "Who's that meant to be?"
All right, I won't ask you to do one then. Okay.
Unless I say Betty, then people go, "Oh, Frank Spencer." Okay,
sure. All right, that's great. All right, where is the best place for people to listen to the new album and to keep up with what's going on with BMX Bandits?
Well, it's all of your streaming networks, but it's also available in vinyl, and CD.
Nice.
Which I think were lovely things. We made the new album as an album, and it was partly a reaction against the current trend in technology. We wanted to make an album that was you could listen to it as standalone tracks, but it was very much a listening experience with a shape, a bit like the mixtapes we were talking about. You put it on and you're taking in a journey, and it's all deliberate. And when you turn over to side 2, if you're listening on vinyl, that's not just random where you're turning over. We thought about that, and we thought about how the record changes at that after the kind of commercial break. So streaming networks are available, and for some people that's fine because you don't have that much money, and I'd rather people were able to hear the music than not hear it. But if you want to buy the vinyl, I'd say it's kind of essentially great. And I think CD, I think they've taken a lot of care in making it good. So many options for you.
Great.
Go and listen to it. If a friend's got a copy, go around to their house and share it. Yeah, that's an amazing experience. One of the last things, funnily enough, I remember Alex Chilton, who was in Big Star, and he became big friends with quite a lot of us guys from Glasgow. And Alex didn't have that many records, but boy, that guy knew hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs and knew how to play them. And I remember saying to Alex, about not having many records, and he would sort of say, when it came to a point, he was usually just, he only wanted so many and he would give some away. And I go, well, don't you miss them? He's going, well, if I want to hear a song and I don't have it, I go around to a friend's house who has it and we'll listen to it together.
Amazing.
And he's going, that's even better than sitting by yourself listening to it. You're sharing it. And I always thought, well, that's true. Because I've got a lot of my happiest listening memories are, like with my friends, like playing the record for the first time and dancing about like idiots, or being moved by it, or being inspired by it and going, let's try something like that. So if you think you might like BMX Bandits but you aren't sure, if you know someone that's got some stuff, why not go around and ask them to play you some of their favorites?
I love that. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording. Don't run away just yet. One moment.
There's some nuggets in that, weren't there?
We're going to get to some of those.
We can pick over now.
Sure, it's good. Sure. It is good.
But don't you think he was just really kind of deep and thoughtful and open-minded, funny, but also deep and thoughtful at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really sort of engaging person. He's the sort of person you just want to. I was quite jealous that I wasn't in the interview chatting to him, but then you said I would have ruined it anyway. So
I didn't. I was joking. But like you say, and it was a long one, but the time just went. I didn't realize when it when I noticed it was like an hour mark. I was like, oh God, I better wrap this up. I feel a bit
did
guilty.
Your standard apology for keeping you so long.
Yeah, but I really did mean it that time. I did mean it that time, actually, because it was long.
I know.
But like you say, it was just so kind of engaging and warm, you know.
No, brilliant, brilliant interview. Really enjoyed it, and I like the way that the band is just sort of him with different collaborators over time. I think keeps it fresh, doesn't it, when you do it like that? Well, it's got to, isn't it? Because it's different musicians all the time. Like that.
Yeah.
I can't really think of an example of anyone else that really does that.
I'm sure our listeners can. So
there must
let us know in the comments. Yeah.
There must be some. And I like the fact that it's not like he falls out with the other members and then gets it. They're all sort of dip in and out when they want to, sort of thing. It's just like a collaborative sort of group of people who he dips in and out of it. I like it. I like the way that works. Seems to work for him anyway.
Yeah, he talks a lot about the album Dreamers on the Run, doesn't he? And I started to realise it really meant a lot to him, this album.
Sounds like it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Like the words, that phrase is a phrase he's had for years by the sounds of it. And he is one, right? A dreamer on the run, but I'm not quite sure what he means by it. I guess he just means people like him who are sort of like the artist type.
Yeah, and I guess on the run means he's always pushing forward. He's always looking for to do the next thing, right?
I mean, we didn't really talk about this earlier on because I wanted to bring it up now because I knew this was coming up. But it kind of brings us on to there's been a bit of a debate in the Facebook group about something that Dave said last week. It was the debate about whether artists should or shouldn't get paid for just being an artist.
Just being an artist.
Well, no, but for the process of being an artist.
I don't see the debate. I mean, I'm obviously right.
You've never been more wrong about anything.
But
come on, Dave. Be like Baby's dad in Dirty Dancing, and when you say when you're wrong.
It's just I think we're just misunderstanding each other.
Yeah, I think so too. But from
Douglas, don't fuck you. Don't let him get away with his neoliberal fucking bullshit. Well, how did we misunderstand each other? Come on, explain it better.
Shall I tell you where I'm at? Which I think is I understand both perspectives. You shouldn't just get paid because you write a song and put it out there. If no one likes it, why should you get paid for it? Do you know what I mean? You can't. Not everyone should get paid for just sitting there and writing a song. Yeah. It has to have some value to other people, right?
Yeah. I think music artists are definitely underpaid. I'll give you that.
Yeah, we all agree about that.
Yeah, you don't, like what Neil said, you don't deserve to get paid
just for writing a song.
No.
But you get paid for sitting on your arse all day, typing a couple of fucking numbers into a computer, nipping off to your masturbatorium every 10 minutes, and you get paid an extortionate amount of money. You don't deserve that either.
First, I don't get paid an extortionate amount of money.
Well, you do.
I'm selling my labour.
Well, they're selling their labour too.
Providing a service.
No, they're not. It's not labour. That's the point.
Yes, it is. Of course it's labour. How is it not?
No, it's not.
How is it not labour? How is it not?
If art is labour, it's not art.
Does it take time and skill? Yes. Then it's labour.
But that doesn't mean it's labour.
Yes, it does. How is it not?
It takes time and skill to have a shit, but it's not labour, is it?
It doesn't. It doesn't take skill. It doesn't take skill to have a shit.
Dave, I don't think you're helping yourself with this argument now.
Of course it takes skill. You have to learn to do it.
Well, it takes skill to wipe. I'll give you that.
I guess it's the difference between something being a hobby and it being a job, right? You're saying that people who do it as a hobby should get paid for it as well.
Yes, of course. It's labour. It's taking your skills and knowledge and spending time to produce something for people to consume, and it's of course it should be compensated.
But only if people buy it, right? Or only if people want to buy it.
Not necessarily.
I've had enough of debating this nonsense.
Well, You're a neoliberal stooge.
The point I was trying to make is, for people like Douglas, it's a need. He needs to make music, right? It's not a choice. He has to.
Yeah.
That's what keeps him grounded. That's what keeps him sane. And that's, he wouldn't
And he's
be able to
producing,
not make music.
and he's what he produces has great value, in my opinion.
Yeah, see, that's the difference. I guess that's where the debate
Yeah,
is.
but that's just your opinion, isn't it? Like, if you're saying, so a band that, if a death metal band do it, and in your opinion it doesn't have value, then they shouldn't get paid because you don't like death metal.
No, it
That's
doesn't.
bullshit.
It just means I'm not going to buy their record, but I'm sure other people will.
But
And
you
if they
said,
don't,
so you're saying
if
they
no
have,
one-
so they do have value.
Well, if people are buying their record, then yeah. But if
Yeah.
no one's interested, then why should you get paid? It just doesn't make any sense.
But
Let's park it for now.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
We can eke this out each week. It'll get people listening.
I think people are already bored with it. But go on.
Yeah. I mean, you could say, like, should Westlife get paid for their work? Apparently not, according to him.
Yeah,
Worst human beings that he's ever met.
Yeah, that was really nice. That that you didn't expect him to be that candid, and he was, and it's brilliant.
That's one of my favourite ever interview moments.
It was really great. Didn't hold back,
it's just great when you're sort of one's prejudices that one has is confirmed.
And you proved right. Yeah.
You just we all live for those moments
because we know that he wouldn't fabricate, and he's a good judge of character. So we can go from what Douglas has said. We'll know that that's true. That Westlife are cunts.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
It's confirmation. Yeah.
He probably thinks you're a cunt now as well. He probably hates you more than Westlife.
I wouldn't blame him.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier, but that super group he was in at the start sounds great. I tried to, I couldn't. There's another band on YouTube called The Pretty Flowers that keep popping up. That this shit American band. It's definitely not them. I couldn't find anything by that band. I don't know if anything exists or not.
Oh, I didn't even think to look at that.
No, I wanted to have a listen, but I couldn't find anything.
Also, I mean, as I often do, I'm portraying my ignorance, but back in the 90s, I remember thinking how little Scotland had contributed.
So wrong. the massive indies.
Couldn't have been more wrong. It's just there are loads of bands that I had no idea came from Scotland.
Yeah, the British indie scene was basically the Scottish indie scene with a few English bands in it.
Huge influence.
Yeah, massive.
But yeah, when he was talking about Kurt Cobain's T-shirt and that, and how Douglas felt a bit embarrassed about that, obviously. But I can understand that. Because when people are asked what band do they wish they were in and stuff, they're not really going to answer it directly, are they? They're always thinking about...
Why is Neil putting on a Hitler moustache?
I don't know.
I just thought I would.
What's happening? The scary thing is it kind of suits you.
You look all right. Don't know what come over me.
Keep that in, man.
I spotted the tape on the table and I thought, it's now or never.
Now or never. Yeah.
So I went for
it. Should have been never.
Yeah.
Go on, Dave. What were you saying?
The bit where about being on Kurt Cobain's T-shirt and how he was obviously a bit embarrassed. You know, he couldn't continue the interview without saying, "Oh, he probably would have said the Vaseline." I think I just couldn't
fathom that might be.
Yeah, he really kind of hedged it and played it down, didn't he?
Yeah. I think so.
But I get that. You know, Kurt Cobain is kind of, I don't know, it was a bit affected, wasn't it? Everything he did and said.
Possibly. No, I don't know.
Why'd you say that?
Because I think he really thought about everything he did and said, didn't he? Before
Yeah,
he
and
did
he
it.
knew that people would scrutinise his answers. Probably, I don't know. But then, if you put on the spot, you just say what you think, don't you?
Yeah, you're going to pick something you genuinely like and
Yeah.
want to be associated with, but you might not go for your most
But that's what
earnest
he was saying.
answer.
That's what Douglas was saying.
Yeah,
But I'm not
exactly.
sure. I'm not sure.
So you think he was trying to be like
Douglas was right.
cool and obscure and indie?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Maybe.
Right.
But I do
Possibly.
think he genuinely liked them.
Maybe they are the band that he wanted to be in. Maybe it's just as simple as that.
Yeah, maybe he was
Maybe.
taking it so seriously. He was like thinking, well, what band, like BMX Bandits, people kind of dip in and out. So I probably could, like possibly have been in that, Maybe he was taking the question very literally. He's doing it.
I just read my notes here and I got a note. I just found it quite funny when he was talking about the confused bloke that he didn't know what else to do. So he just threw a pint glass because he got confused by the satchel and the banana. He panicked.
That's what I do.
I like that. It didn't know what else to do, and that's all he had.
Yeah, but
So I
what
chucked
did
a pint
was he
glass.
confused? What was he confused by? Like he kind of
Panicked because he saw a guy with a satchel and a banana, and he just
kind
didn't
of
know what
liked
to do.
it, but then he hated himself for liking
He didn't
Exactly,
understand
exactly.
his feelings, so he all he could do was chuck a pint glass.
Yeah. That was so interesting, though, that part of it, right? The idea of not being a manly man and, calling himself Nancy and stuff at school. Yeah. Like, well, I said, like in the interview, like the parallels with Kurt Cobain are pretty obvious there, right? He's very well known for that kind of thing. Like when they went on like Headbangers Ball and stuff, he wore a dress just, on purpose because that was like the most kind of macho kind of bullshit thing, at the time, like metal, right? So he went on Headbangers Ball in a dress on purpose, for
So they seem to court
exactly
him, don't
that
they?
reason.
None of us are manly, man, are we?
No. Who's the manliest out of us three, do you reckon?
Probably Dave.
He does do DIY and shit, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does these days.
But he looks like a little fucking pussy, though.
He's got, he's got a wife, 2 kids, dog, nice house.
Yeah. And he does
He's a
DIY
man.
and shit. He probably is the most manly. Yeah, you're right.
He was chopping wood last night with an
Fucking
axe.
hell, that is a proper fella. All right, you're the winner.
He had to take over from me because I was
That's
about
probably
to
the
chop
manliest
finger
thing
off.
I do, actually. Yeah, I'm quite good with an axe.
Yeah.
So there we go. Dave. It'd be Dave, wouldn't it?
Officially. Yeah. It's a pretty low bar.
Most succulent arse and manliest man.
Yeah. Manliest man out of 3 very unmanly men, but yeah.
Oh man, you should have seen Neil yesterday with the axe. Right, it's just a little
God.
his hand was like shaking all over the place. And he's doing this. I had to take
Dave
it off
had to
him.
take over.
Yeah.
Show me how it's done.
Yeah.
I'm like Ned Flanders.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alan McGee, he obviously signed BMX Bandits and admitted he'd underestimated them and thought, well, maybe everyone else had as well. But I just can't, I don't want to offend Douglas, but I just can't help thinking it's the name. It's a bad name.
BMX Bandits?
He explained why it was called the BMX Bandits.
Yeah, but a lot of the time it's the name that really defines
I'm not so sure
how big a band becomes.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, because if it's good enough, it becomes normal, doesn't it?
Yeah,
like the Beatles is objectively a bad name. It's a poor pun.
I don't think it really plays that much of a part.
Unless it's like really bad. Can you think of any like really bad band names?
When I think about how good the band actually is, this is one of the worst.
I know what you mean, though.
Opinion.
I think maybe I think what you mean by this is the songs sound bigger than the name perhaps suggests. I don't know.
Or you're saying it doesn't match? The name doesn't match the music?
Yeah,
possibly,
that for me,
that's what he's saying.
I was expecting something much more BMXy when I was listening to it, but there's nothing BMXy.
I think you mean sort of more off the wall, more sort of a bit like Luke's sort of sacks through a fart tube or whatever. That sort of stuff.
There's a song at the end of the BMX Bandits movie. This goes BMX, BMX. So good. And he can't even ride a bike. There you go.
No, that's the thing about the Beach Boys, isn't it? None of them could surf. That's this point, isn't it?
Well, one of them could surf, I think.
But that's the reason for BMX Bandits, because he couldn't ride a bike.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the point. Yeah.
Yes, I did listen to the interview now.
Hey?
Ooh.
Oh,
For
all
once.
right. You don't usually.
Yes, I do. I listened
Speaking
twice.
of Alan McGee, his story of being in a jacuzzi with Primal Scream and several young ladies sniffing substances off the side of the bar.
Imagine being there, but being sober. Just sitting there in that jacuzzi without having anything whatsoever. I'd feel quite uncomfortable, I think.
Yeah.
Was it like that when you went for that spa break?
Yeah.
Was it?
I bet it was, wasn't it? That kind of jet set crew that you hang with, they're all on coke, aren't they? Helicopter
lot. Coked out of their heads. Helicopter.
Nearly, mate. So close. That nearly worked. Not even close.
Just a shout out to that guy who punched in Newcastle.
Yeah.
I mean, what a fucking arsehole that guy was.
Trying to get a free t-shirt.
Yeah. Has ever anyone deserved it more?
Yeah, I mean, we don't condone violence on the podcast, but it does sound like he, on paper, he probably deserved it.
He probably deserved a punch. Yeah.
So.
It's a good story.
Yeah. All right, so going on to the Noel Gallagher thing. It's confirmed. Again, it's Douglas. We trust him. And
it's a great new piece of evidence, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. In our portfolio,
the file,
Dossier.
But I think because Dave Grohl is obviously, he's not the nicest man in rock anymore because he's a dirty love cheat. Maybe Liam Gallagher could go. Maybe he's our new.
Oh man, if he's buying kids ice creams, right? Putting money behind the counter at the ice cream shop. What the fuck? What a guy.
Exactly. And I've seen videos of him, like fans stopping him and they're like, oh, we couldn't get tickets for the show. He's like, what's your names? Puts them down on the list and says, there you go. You're on the guest list and all that sort of stuff. I've seen him do it. He's a nice guy.
Generous.
Yeah. All right. He's the nicest man in rock.
Well, we can't trust Dave Grohl anymore, can we?
I'm on the fence on this one, but yeah. But proof beyond doubt that Noel Gallagher's a grade A wanker.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
But not as bad as Westlife.
Yeah, not as bad as Westlife.
I like that callback, man.
That's the benchmark. If there's a cunt scale, they're right up at the top.
Yeah.
Westlife. That's our new cuntometer. Westlife at the top.
Sure. We need to get some more people on the scale.
What about Robert Jenrick? Surely he's got to be more of a cunt.
Robert Jenrick.
I think we have to get Douglas to meet them so that we can get his take on it.
Exactly. Yeah. But Jenrick's probably up there, isn't he?
It's got to be up there,
Yeah. And Noel, what a petty little prick, man. Still being angry 10 years later for being asked politely to go to just the next room along to have a fag. What a dick.
But that's such an English trait, I think, to be really put out and annoyed just by being asked to do something or something suggested that you're not doing something quite right. English people, I think, really
get indignant, really.
Yeah. But that obviously Liam's not like that.
I like the fact he talked about kind of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So kind of talking about when he's talking about kind of being open and talking about mental health and stuff in his songs, and he said if he felt a bit uncomfortable, then that was a good thing. It showed that he'd kind of tapped into something meaningful. That was really cool. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the story about how he wrote Serious Drugs. I thought it was a really nice little anecdote.
Yeah.
Dave likes a good story about a song, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I mean
like
he needs that. He's I guess he's made some artistic use of
pain
problems.
Yeah,
he might have had.
But that makes it sound like he's kind of like a utilitarian thing, but it sounds like he's used the music in order to help him through it.
Yeah, it's a better way of putting it. One thing I wanted to talk about was mixtapes. And
oh yes, me too.
Who's Mick?
Yeah. Oh, you know, and the craft he talks about.
Good one, Neil.
Putting into them. I don't know about you, but I always think of sort of the thing that birthed this podcast was when we all had a mixtape competition.
Save a Cock.
Save a Cock, yeah. I don't think we've talked about that, but for me,
I don't think we should.
That's the origin of this whole podcast in my mind.
Tell the story, Dave, if you must. I don't think you should, but go on.
Well, you know, you were on a rare visit over here a couple of years ago. We were around my house. We're talking about music. And, you know, we just said, all right, let's see who can make the best mixtape. And the one who makes the worst has to chop his cock off. And we did. You know, there's got to be high stakes to it.
Yeah. There's no point otherwise.
Yeah. So we did it.
So one of us hasn't got a cock. Anyway.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you which one. But I'm pretty sure people can work it out.
Actually, I listened to your mixtape recently, Luke, and I do appreciate it more than I did then.
The one that I made for the
Cut the
Cock
I've still got it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really make mixtapes. Well, I used to. I used to make the Neil mixtapes. Do you remember those?
Yeah, Neil mix. Yeah, of course.
I got up to about 10, I think. Neil mix 10.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, 90s.
Oh, and there definitely is an art to it. Right? Thurston Moore writes quite a lot about the art of the mixtape. There's a craft to it, you know.
Yeah, because if you just put your 10 favourite best songs on it, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
They just don't go together, do they?
No.
There's more to it than that.
Well, you have to put yourself in the listener's seat, don't you?
Yes, you of course. They're the important thing, not you. Yeah. And you need to put something which you know they're going to be familiar with, kind of, but not completely. So either like a genre that you know they know, but a band that you think they probably won't, or like a band that you know they know, but a song which you think they probably don't know. So that kind of thing. So you're it's not like something totally new and unexpected that they're not interested in. So you're kind of subtly drawing them in, but also introducing them to new stuff.
Yeah, so that's like, say for this podcast, they know that you're going to put something on there by Teenage Fan Club or whatever. They'd be like, oh, I didn't think he'd use that Teenage Fan Club song.
Exactly.
That sort of thing, right?
That kind of thing. Exactly. And I really liked it at the end of the interview when he said, go to a friend's house and listen. You know, if you're not sure and you don't want to commit to buying it, you know, go to a friend's house and then listen together, share the experience, which is what we used to do, man. That's how we're mates. That's the reason we're mates, isn't it? Going to each other's houses and listening to music together.
I don't know. Is that what we're mates? I'm not sure how we're mates.
Well, me and Dave were mates first.
Yeah, I think I just needed some new ones.
Yeah, you're a loser. We kind of picked you up out of the gutter, didn't we, Dave?
Dusted him off.
Gave him a new pair of Pura Vida jeans from Cromwell's Madhouse. And he was a reborn man. It's probably the reason we stayed mates, music, wasn't it? Going around each other's houses and listening to records and cassettes, right?
Yeah, I think it was part of it, wasn't it? Plus our hilarious sense of humours.
Don't know about that. What do you mean?
I put a Hitler moustache on.
Oh man, Nazis are so funny.
It's niche.
It is good though, that bit in Father Ted where he's
That is good.
That's one of the best bits of TV ever, I reckon.
Yeah.
That's genius, whoever came up with that.
Was there a bit of tape on the window, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And he was doing that.
He's going to cleaning the window.
All right. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Thanks so much, Douglas, for coming on. Really enjoyed that one. If you are watching, then please do give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Let us know your favourite BMX Bandit tracks, if you've seen them live, etc. Get involved in the ongoing debate.
But could could we refilm the whole thing? Because I've got this hair sticking out here. I'm really
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah, sure, we'll do that.
I'll get rid
Well,
of it.
Neil,
I'll get rid of it. Don't worry. Yeah,
yeah, he'll
Be
sort it
fine,
out
mate.
in the edit.
I'll
Yeah,
get
yeah,
rid
yeah.
of it. Don't worry.
All right.
And if you're listening, then please do rate and review and share it with your mates. Please do keep doing that because we need to get to those 1 million followers to keep going. So we're way off yet, but we're getting there slowly. So share it with your mates. Luke, back catalogue.
Back catalogue, yeah. So if you enjoyed that, what other Scottish indie bands do we have?
Biss.
Biss.
Biss,
Yes.
that's a good one.
Yeah. Couple more.
We need to get more.
We
for sure.
do. But we've got plenty of your favourite 90s indie bands. Yeah, there's plenty in there. So have a look around. Also, as we talked about mixtapes on this episode, so I do a mixtape for every episode on Spotify. So the link will be in the somewhere on the episode. So plenty of BMX Bandits, of course, a load of Scottish indie. Sweep the Leg Johnny, I put on that as well. Sometimes my balls feel like tits.
I look forward to hearing that.
If it's on Spotify, it should be.
All right, so that's it for this one. Dave?
See you in a minute.